because of how the market is shaping up and where there's a lot of would-be buyers but not a ton of sellers, that makes them appealing.
I want to shift to the Jazz. They've been a very exciting team this year, and I think obviously not a lot of people were expecting that. They've lots of analysts talking about the Jazz being like, oh, clearly they're going to be tanking this season. Just wanted to get your thoughts on like their hot start for the season early on and just kind of what you've observed so far and the reason for their success.
Yeah, count me among those people who thought they were going to be incredibly bad this year, right?
Me too.
And you look at the way they played in the preseason, and there certainly was nothing there to give you any like contraindication to that. I think what was behind the hot start, where they went 10-3, is that they weren't a traditional tanking team in the sense of having like very little talent on their roster. They did have a bunch of mismatched parts, to be sure, but they kept Mike Conley, who's a former All-Star. They kept Jordan Clarkson, who's a former six-man a year. They acquired Lauri Markkanen in the Donovan Mitchell trade, who, in his new locale has like found a way to take his game to a new level and has become an all-star in this year's game. When your bench is full of guys like Colin Sexton and Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt, like you're looking at a team that has just way more talent than a traditional tanking team does. And the question then became, all right, well, is this going to be a roster full of guys, of me first guys looking to establish their own numbers in search of that next contract with whatever their next team may be? Rookie head coach Will Hardy, all of 35 years old, has found a way to convince everyone to buy in, to put the team first, which I don't think many people thought would happen. Beyond all of those circumstances, I think they benefited early just from, as you said, everyone just assuming they were going to be bad and, coming into games not really expecting much and shockingly getting run off the court by a team that had a lot more talent and was playing a lot more cohesively than anyone expected. So that got them through the first, Baker's dozen games. And then all of a sudden you saw the adjustment from the rest of the league where it's like, okay, we do actually have to bring it against this team. We do actually have to play hard. We do actually have to try. And then once that happened, now you're starting to see kind of the limitations of this team where the transition defense is not great on a nightly basis. They are susceptible to getting beaten on the defensive boards. We've seen game after game where opponents like dominate offensive rebounds and second chance points and really take it to them that way. So it's an interesting situation in that they're way more competitive than anyone thought they would be. And yet now you're seeing the limitations of the roster. Could they be a play-in team? Yeah, theoretically. That would definitely be an accomplishment relative to what everyone thought. At the same time, the legacy of the 2023 Utah Jazz might ultimately be they wound up providing a lot of veterans to a lot of actually contending teams at the trade deadline. It's going to be an interesting couple of days going forward.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where I wanted to go next, because it seems like that's going to be a line in the sand in terms of like what is staying put on this roster and what is moving on. Do you have any particular sense about or just expectations about who might be moved and who is like fixed on this roster for the future?
Well, the Jazz are kind of in an enviable position right now because really they are in a place where they don't have to do anything they don't want to just because of where they are in terms of their rebuild. But because of how the market is shaping up and where there's a lot of would-be buyers but not a ton of sellers, that makes them appealing because they do have a lot of guys who could theoretically help out contending teams. They've got a lot of guys who are on team-friendly contracts. At the same time, like Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck, the Brain Trust, don't have to move anyone who they don't want to if they feel like the price is not right, because everyone who they've got who's on the market is under team control going forward, with the exception of Jordan Clarkson, who's an unrestricted free agent this summer, but who is not opposed to returning to Utah. He's not willing to sign an extension right now because frankly, the team is limited in what it can give him. And, by the CBA right now, he'll make more by becoming an unrestricted free agent and then just signing an outright new deal. But beyond that, Jared Vanderbilt is under contract next year. Malik Beasley has a team option next year. Mike Conley has, a team option with a buyout next year. Kelly Olynyk only has $4 million guaranteed next year. So if you want shooting, Kelly Olynyk and Malik Beasley are available. If you want a hustle guy, Vanderbilt could be your man. If you need, if you're say like the Clippers and you're tired of trying to get by with Reggie Jackson and Trey Mann as your point guards, and you want a guy who can orchestrate things and shoot a little better, Mike Conley might be a great choice for you. But at the same time, we've heard that Danny Ainge's asking price is more than what other teams want. And frankly, he should be asking that because, again, he's not in a position where he needs to sell these guys off. His priority right now is what makes sense for the long-term future of the Jazz. They've got a few years where they can play with where no one is expecting them to do anything. And so it becomes, okay, do we want more draft assets? Can we find ourselves in a position to take on, a young guy who's got some potential, who doesn't fit in with another team's plans? Frankly, with the number of draft picks they've got going forward, I think they find themselves, believing that come this summer, at least they're in a good position to maybe take on the next Kyrie Irving, right? The next superstar who, for whatever reason, finds himself at odds with his current team and in need of a change of scenery. So that's obviously down the road. In terms of the trade deadline, really the only guys who are off the table are Lauri Markkanen for, very apparent reasons, Walker Kessler, the rookie center who's been a great facsimile of what Rudy Gobert provided to this team for a long time and on a much cheaper contract. And they also really like, from what I'm told, rookie wing Ochai Agbaji, who was one of the pieces included in the Donovan Mitchell trade. So those guys are probably the closest they get to untouchable. Not that any of them are like absolutely untouchable. Hey, if the Bucks want to get rid of Giannis Antetokounmpo for whatever reason, Lauri Markkanen will be available.
Right.
Beyond that, those guys are the ones they plan to keep. Literally everyone else on the roster can be had for the right price.
Eric, going back to the All-Star game, I want to get your thoughts on Lauri Markkanen, just him making the team. I'm a Bulls fan, so I saw the value in him. It didn't work out in Chicago, unfortunately, but it's good to see him flourishing in Utah and to see why so many people were so high on him when he was first drafted. So can you guys give your thoughts on just him making the team, what his vibe is? You see him being featured in the All-Star game just because it's his first time and it's in Utah.
It's a good question, right? Like the only experience that Utahns have with that circumstances back in '93 when John Stockton and Karl Malone famously kind of were named co-MVPs of the game. Slightly different circumstances just because they played a much more prominent role. Lauri, honestly, I think as a first-time All-Star at 25 years old in his sixth NBA season is just thrilled to be a part of the game. We really saw the makings of this ascension with his play for Finland at Eurobasket this past fall, right? Where you started to see him all of a sudden grab a rebound and rather than just look for the point guard, take the ball up the court himself. We saw him expand his offensive repertoire. Part of the problem that he ran into in Chicago and in Cleveland is that he was kind of relegated at times to a go stand in the corner and be an outlet for the guy doing a drive and kick. Here, he really has become a 3-level scorer, and it's a chicken or the egg type situation. Is it, well, here in Utah, they no longer had Donovan Mitchell, and so circumstances dictated Will Hardy giving him more of a chance to kind of unlock that potential that had been there, but had kind of stagnated? Or was it simply the fact that over the course of the summer, he had simply elevated his game to a point, as we saw with Finland, that it was undeniable that he was going to be the man that rather than having, that number one option gifted to him by the coaching staff. He honestly just like reached out and grabbed it by the throat and took it because it was undeniable. It's a little bit of both, right? Like certainly he has become an incredible player. He's not only attempting a career high number of threes per game and making them at a career high rate, he's already also shattered his season high in dunks for a season. So like we're seeing him do things. We're seeing him become a more variable player, right? He truly is a 3-level scorer. That said, in terms of what he'll do in the All-Star game, he's surrounded by a ton of talent, right? Like I think it's probably not a situation where they're like, hey, let's look to highlight the hometown guy. I really do think it'll be a situation of if he's open from 3, he's going to shoot it. If he's got an open pathway to the rim, he's going to drive it and dunk it, and he'll have some success that way. But do I expect him to drop 40 and be holding the Kobe Bryant trophy aloft at the end? No. Like, obviously, that'd be a dream scenario from a beat writer's perspective. That'd make my life easy that night. But I really do think he's just looking to fit in and enjoy the experience that comes with being honored for his long-awaited breakthrough season.